is watching and waiting for them to start their ground offensive. But for the moment, these airstrikes look to have caused as many as 560 deaths. That's the latest from the Palestinian Health Authority, but that number is likely to go up. And as you heard there from David, this is total siege. So fuel, electricity, water, all cut off to the Gaza Strip. These are things that they don't get at the best of times, and yet now completely cut off. People have been told to evacuate. 125,000 people have been internally displaced, we understand, at least in Gaza, again, by the last count. Difficult to know right now. Some of them, we understand, have been able to get to shelters or United Nations schools. There are United Nations properties inside the Gaza Strip, but quite where Palestinians in Gaza are able to fully evacuate is not clear, given it has been sealed now. But the Israelis, this, as you say, this is their 9/11. This was Pearl Harbor for them, and so they are preparing a full throttle assault on the Gaza Strip after having cleared the area next to Gaza. They say earlier today they managed to completely clear it of the Hamas militants who were there, and now they're going about calling up reservists. And in the last few minutes we've had it confirmed that they've called up 300,000 reservists to join their war effort. That, for a country this size, is a colossal number. We were driving down the highway and we saw cars pulled up on the side of the highway just for miles and miles, and our driver said these are reservists. They're allowed to park basically on the highway and go and volunteer for military service. So we're all watching and waiting for the major response from the Israelis. It feels like it's going to come in some kind of ground invasion, but we'll have to wait and see, guys.
And James, as we're listening to you, we're looking at the live picture from Gaza, seeing what seems to be already the beginning of Israel's response. Mick, I want to go to you. This is such a terrible shock to the state of Israel, and the Israeli Defensive Forces have been the pride of that country for decades, handling assaults from nation states, from Palestinians, from terrorists, and here is this utter surprise assault on a huge level. And I wonder, what does it tell you about the IDF and its preparations for this, and about the capacity of the enemy of Israel, Hamas?
So, Terry, it is surprising. I think you are correct. This is one of the most sophisticated militaries and one of the most sophisticated intelligence service, the domestic intelligence service being Shin Bet. So I think it's really shocking to quite a few people that are familiar with Israel. Not just that it looks like many indicators were missed on the signal side, on the human intelligence side of an operation of this capacity. It seems like there should have been something picked up. And then also the response of the IDF. I mean, yes, it was a surprise, but according to reports from people on the ground, it took hours to respond. So that's something that's going to have to be looked at and then obviously fixed in the future. But right now, I think they're looking toward the immediate potential for a large-scale ground invasion into Gaza.
Absolutely. And if I could just follow up quickly, Mick, Reuters is reporting that Hamas was able to jam the communications, at least of those communities along the border, if not beyond. Is that a capacity you would have expected Hamas to have, or is that something that a nation state might have provided?
So I think this does indicate that there was a nation state behind it, potentially later on. We know historically they fund about 90% of Hamas's military budget. I would wait to hear from the U.S. intelligence community on whether they had a direct involvement in this, but that is an indicator that they did, because that is a very sophisticated device. And in order to do it substantially, there are probably multiple devices plus a cyber attack that also occurred with it. And that does show a level of sophistication that you wouldn't necessarily expect Hamas to have organically.
James, what more can you tell us about the hostage situation, even the possibility of American hostages? We have all seen the chilling images now from the festival and elsewhere where it appears all these innocent women, children, festival goers were taken by Hamas fighters there. Would love for you to weigh in as well, Mick. But James, what can you tell us? What do you know?
Yeah, these were some of the most distressing images, I think, of this entire episode. As you say, men, women, children taken away, young women ripped away from their boyfriends. children, toddlers, part of entire families who've been taken away into the Gaza Strip. Now, when in the hours that followed this assault, Hamas said that they had dozens of hostages. Another terrorist group that operates in the Strip, Islamic Jihad, also claimed to have something like 30 hostages. Impossible to verify these claims, and so the assumption is they are in Gaza. What they will do with these hostages, I mean, it's anyone's guess. The assumption perhaps to use them as human shields, to move them around inside the Strip in different locations, perhaps underground, away from the airstrikes. We have had a report earlier today, again, impossible to verify these claims that perhaps some of these hostages had been killed in the airstrikes, an effort perhaps by these terrorists to make claims to stop the strikes going ahead. But, you know, it is incredibly distressing for the families of these people to watch what we're all watching now in Gaza and wondering that their family members are in there somewhere. I mean, we spoke to one woman whose daughter Kim was at that desert rave, 22 years old. We went to her home. Jennifer Damty was the mother, and she said she got a call at 6 a.m. on Saturday from Kim, desperate, wondering what she should do. Jennifer told her to run, to hide, and they haven't heard from her since. She's just one of the many who are missing and as yet unidentified, perhaps among the dead at that desert rave. And these families, by the way, are going from hospital to hospital with anything they can find which might have the DNA of their loved ones in order to try and get a match for the dead. I mean, imagine that as a parent going from place to place, hoping that your child is dead, so at least you don't have to imagine the idea that they've been taken into Gaza by terrorists.
We're going to talk to one of those parents in just a second, but Mick, I wanted you to weigh on this as well with regard to the hostages. You're former CIA. Do you think there's any kind of conversations going on right now or a plan to intervene with regard to the hostage situation, especially if there's Americans among them?
So, Kira, that's right. It's certainly when there's an American taking hostages, the U.S. military, the CIA will spin up and throw a lot of resources at a potential recovery. That said, it's going to be extraordinarily different. Like James said, some of these hostages are likely human shields. All of them are probably completely guarded, and they have a certain system of which it would be almost impossible to recover them. They could have them in tunnels. The tunnels could be wired. So any country that can help facilitate recovery of these hostages, I think, is a very good thing.
All right, James Longman on the scene there, and Mick Mulroy, thank you very much for helping us understand this shocking incident from all these angles. Thanks very much. I know we'll be getting back to you. Well, we are getting an outpouring of stories from inside Israel and Gaza, and our next guest has an urgent message following the attack on Israel.
He is desperately searching for his son, an American citizen serving right now in the IDF at the Gaza border. He's been missing in action for more than 36 hours now without any contact. Ruby Chen joins us now.
Ruby, thank you for being with us, especially at this moment. Do you know, what can you tell us about where your son, Itay, was last seen in action?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question. First of all, thank you for having me and amplifying my voice. So he was at his base at the border of Gaza. We got a message from him Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m., saying that there is bombing going on. And that was the last time that we had any communication with him. Since then, he has been defined officially by the IDF as missing in action. What does that mean? It means that nobody physically has been able to identify him since. He is not in the hospitals, and he is not one of the deceased. As such, the working assumption is if he's not here in the state of Israel, he must be someplace else.
So what's the IDF telling you? Anything specific? And do you believe now that he may have been captured by Hamas?
Well, I think that it's a valid working assumption to have, that the lack of communication that Hamas provide Israel regarding the people that they've abducted, which is a bit, sick. People, Holocaust survivors to little children are the type of people that they gathered up and took them over the other side of the border. But I think, the United States we are all in favor of what President Biden, Secretary of State, have been very fierce in their comments about what they've seen and, how the beliefs and values of the United States, is different than what we've seen here, and providing Israel an ability to protect itself. But I'd like to maybe focus on the previous segment and what is happening now in Gaza.